Hi, it's me, Olivia. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe to my channel for interesting stories and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the comment. Thanks.
I found the rock in the creek. A curious thing it was, so I took it home. It almost seemed to me to glow. It was only about the size of half a roll of dimes, a small thing, easily carried in a pocket, which is where I carried it, and had a peculiar greenish tinge to it. I didn't discover it had powers until later. My name's Jack and I'm 17 years old, and still a virgin. Not my plan, but, well, what's a guy to do when you're not good-looking enough to catch the girls? I was in a mall one day, hanging around, scoping out all the girls, as I usually am when I've got nothing better to do. Well, I'm just standing there, leaning against the wall with my hands in my pocket, and the rock in my hand, when I see this one girl. Good-looking as hell. Tall, gorgeous, and stacked. She was wearing 3-inch heels, a short black skirt, one of those semi-transparent off-white blouses, and a short kind of jacket. Long brown hair just past her shoulders and a really cute face. I was looking at her when I got the notion of her looking better as a blonde, when before my very eyes, her hair became blonde. I couldn't believe what just happened. I immediately suspected the rock I had my fingers around. I wanted to try it again, so looked around for a likely candidate. I walked around until I saw a lingerie shop. Inside was a pretty girl working all alone, so I walked in. "Can I help you?" she asked, nice enough. She was about 5 feet 6 inches, pretty face, typical high school type of body, thin but promising. Nothing special, you understand. I wanted to change that. "Hi, I'm Jack. I'm looking to buy a bra for a friend of mine, but don't know what size she would take." I looked at her chest, probably around a 34C cup. "You could always return it for the correct size, Jack," she helpfully returned. "Do you know what type you're interested in?" "No, I don't." "Could I see yours?" I asked while fingering the rock. "Excuse me?" she said with an angry tone. "I don't think so." That didn't work. Maybe I shouldn't put it as a question. "I want to see your bra," I simply stated. She turned to me, without any anger, and said, "Let's go back here. I don't want everyone to see me." I followed her back, where she promptly undid the buttons on her shirt, showing me her sheer underwire bra beneath. The material was so thin I could clearly see her nipples. I really wanted more than just looking then, so I reached my hand towards her breasts, where she immediately slapped it away. "What do you think you're doing?" she yelled. "Sorry," I muttered. "I was just letting you look, nothing more." She then began to button up. I of course wanted more, having had such a terrific show. Just then, I had a really perverted idea. "I really like your breasts," I told her. She merely looked at me with distaste, then picked up a white satin underwire, trimmed in lace. "If you don't know what size she is, then I recommend this one. It's quite comfortable." I looked at the bra she had, then pretending to contemplate what she said, I imagined her with larger breasts. I was instantly rewarded as her breasts started to grow larger and rounder. At first, she didn't know what was going on. When the buttons on her shirt started to pop off, one by one, she knew something was wrong. "What's happening?" she all but screamed. Her tits were too large now for her bra, as both bulged over the cups. I watched, fascinated, as her flesh swelled ever larger until there was a slight ripping sound, followed suddenly by her breasts bouncing and jiggling, naked, right in front of my face. "Get out!" she yelled at me as she vainly tried to cover up her now very large breasts with her thin arms. I hurried out, sure that security might have been alerted by her scream. What I had discovered was totally cool. Not only could I change a person's look simply by willing it, but I could get them to do probably anything I wanted them to. This was my means for revenge on quite a few people I knew. People that have had something coming to them for the longest time now. For now I was going home, but along the way I was going to pick up half-dozen adult magazines. I would need the proper ideas if I was going to make a change in this town. Wearing jeans and a t-shirt, I laid on my bed, calmly paging through the assortment of magazines I had purchased. It didn't occur until I was almost home that I could have got them for free simply by willing the guy to let me have them. Oh well, live and learn. Right now, I had some serious ideas going on in my head about one Jimmy Fitz, the high school running back. When I get through with Jimmy, people are going to be calling him Jeannie. I couldn't help but smirk at the fun I was planning for myself tomorrow at school. I dug the rock out of my pocket and looked at it long and hard. I couldn't tell what type of stone it was. Hell, I thought to myself, maybe the abilities so far had really come from me after all, and not the rock. I kept it in my hand, too nervous to let it out of my sight, and continued to turn the pages. It was to be expected that looking at naked women would have an effect on me, and as I started to admire one model's ass, I started noticing an uncomfortable tightness in my pants. Mostly around the hips, ass, and thigh area. I didn't think much of it, since my cock was also causing me some discomfort, and took my pants off. It was about time to go to bed anyway. Snugly in bed, I again looked through my magazines. I was thinking Jimmy was a leg man, as he always had a comment about the cheerleaders' legs before and after a game. It might be interesting to give him the smoothest, hottest legs around. Sort of start small, with something he could still hide, and watch from there. So with this in mind, I searched through the pages until I had decided on the pair of legs I would give Jimmy. Admiring them, I couldn't help but imagine running my hands up and down them myself. So smooth and sexy. I absently scratched the side of my leg underneath the blanket, not noticing how smooth my skin was, or for that matter, how hairless they had become. If I was going to affect his legs first, I thought, then I would change his general build second. After that would be his body hair, then the limbs and shoulders would slim a little further, followed by the widening of his hips. Before I gave him his tits and ass though, I would have to change his face and hair. Of course, by that time, he would be wanting to leave school. Unless, I thought to myself, he had a change of mind. I couldn't help but laugh at my plan. Tossing the rock on my dresser top, I finished going through the magazines, ripping out the pages that possessed the ideal parts one would give Jimmy. When I get through, he won't only be unable to recognize himself, but will win just about every beauty contest for 100 or so miles around. With my plan fully detailed in my mind, I turned the light out and closed my eyes, looking forward to tomorrow's game. I woke up excited and jumped into the shower, eager to begin my trail of revenge. Something was bothering me this morning, but I couldn't figure out what. I just couldn't put my finger on it. I finished with my shower, toilet, and brushing my teeth, and proceeded to get dressed. I slipped on underwear, noting they must have shrunk a little, but as I attempted to pull on my pants, I discovered they wouldn't go past my hips. Yeah, these were mine. I thought as I held them up, so why couldn't I get them on? I looked down at my body. That's when my jaw dropped. I had the legs of a woman. I also detected something odd about my hips. Looking in my mirror, I was able to see what had happened to me, but not how. My hips had widened and my butt had gotten rounder and about 3 times bigger. Also, my legs were silky smooth, very sexy looking, and looked totally natural, connected to my hips and ass. Mom's voice startled me, reminding me I was going to be late for school. Except, I did not want to go to school looking like this. This is precisely the kind of problem I wanted Jimmy to have, not me. And I still wanted Jimmy to have problems. I looked at my reflection again, realizing I was still male from the waist up, and where it counted. Nobody had to know. No, wait. That wouldn't work either. If I wore pants that fit, then my wide hips and big round ass would really show. I would have to wear a disguise. I could simply change back, but in case something went wrong, I didn't want to be the one blamed. Then the most coolest idea I've ever had popped into my head. I could disguise myself as a girl. I could do whatever I wanted to Jimmy, or anybody else for that matter, and nobody would suspect old Jack. The first thing to do is use the rock to convince Mom I was a girl. That should be easy. In fact, I bet I could do that right now. Holding the rock in one hand, I thought, Mom has always thought I was a girl. That should do it. Now to create a disguise for me. I turned back to the mirror and looked at myself. I would much rather create big muscles, but that will have to wait, I guess. Instead, I imagined myself as a girl. My upper body started to switch right before my eyes almost immediately. I became slender and girlish, while my face smoothed and adjusted in a few heartbeats. I watched with astonishment as my nipples enlarged, followed by the growing of my breasts into what I would call the perfect size. My hair lengthened as if by magic, reaching easily down to the middle of my back. And just that quick, I was a girl. I was almost hypnotized by my own breasts. They were the first ones I've seen up close. Just seeing them jiggle slightly made the nipples grow turgid and pink, sending tingly thrills down my spine. As I took off my ill-fitting underwear, I realized I was a girl all over. This had better work, I told myself. I immediately began searching for something to wear, knowing my pants wouldn't fit my hips. I could wear one of my jerseys, but for jeans, I guess I would have to borrow a pair of my sister's. She's in college and wouldn't mind anyway, and if she did, I'd change it. There was only one pair left in her dresser, so I took them, and a pair of her panties. I didn't care for all the lace on them. The panties fit perfectly, so I slipped into her jeans. The length was good, but were a little tight around the ass and hips. My hair kept falling into my face, causing me to swing my head around in I couldn't help but notice, girlish gesture. My jersey is kind of thin, so I'd better grab one of her bras, too. Looking into her lingerie, all I could find were a couple of really sexy black satin underwire ones. I saw that sis wore a 36C, so let's see what size I am. It took longer to fasten the thing and get it into place than I thought, but eventually I got it done. It seemed to me, as I gazed at the soft mounds bulging out of the satin, that I was a little larger than sis. I knew I had to wear a bra, but didn't know what type this one was. It seemed to push both tits together and up, creating quite a bit of cleavage. I was certainly well endowed for a teenager. Also, my erect nipples continued to poke through. I slipped the jersey over my head, brushed my hair, and grabbed a pair of shoes. I found I would have to find different shoes for mine were too large. Again I was in sis' room, this time in her closet. She had 2 pair of old tennis shoes and a pair of black 3-inch heels. The tennis shoes did not fit me. I tried the heels, just for hell, and found that not only did they fit, but were actually comfortable. I knew I'd have to wear some hose, remembering from my mom and sis that they got blisters if they didn't, so searched through sis' lingerie drawer again. I was beginning to realize that dressing as a girl was a big pain in the ass. I found some stockings, thinking they would be better than pantyhose, and took off my pants. The stockings went up my smooth legs, causing me all sorts of thrills. All this satin and nylon was really starting to turn me on. Then I discovered they wouldn't stay up by themselves, so I got a garter belt out. This too, was black satin and lace. I put the garter on and connected the tabs to the tops of the stockings, then put the jeans on and slid into the heels. I could still see my nipples, even through the jersey. I was going downstairs for the first time as a girl. Mom didn't even flinch, just chatted about what she was going to do today, as if I cared. She never did that before. Oh well. I lived so close to school that I always walked. I found that walking in heels was something I had to practice anyway. Funny thing, though. The more I walked, the better I got, but the more I could feel my hips and ass move. Soon, I had the heels down pat, but my hips were gyrating like nothing I've ever seen. And by the honking of the cars going by, my ass was flexing wantonly. I also learned I couldn't move too quickly or else my erotically bouncy tits would bounce right out of their satin cups. Eventually though, I made it to school. Naturally, I was considered a new student. That was just fine. I was only going to school like this for one day. I made sure nobody saw me get books out of my locker and went in search of my victim. I sort of had a different idea about how I was going to screw Jimmy up and wanted to test it on someone else first. Someone who I owed back. Looking around, I spotted Lisa. And that gave me a different idea altogether. Lisa is really good looking, but a total bitch. Her daddy, as she likes to refer to him as, owns several stores out of state, so has quite a bit of money. The problem I have with Lisa is she embarrassed me in front of my friends when I asked her out. I thought she took it too far, so I was going to even the score a little. I spied her talking to one of her friends by her locker. She was dressed in her cheerleader uniform and a book bag hanging by one arm. She must have been talking about something she loved, because she was real LY animated. Leaning casually against someone's locker, I studied her, and realized that without her friends, she wasn't much. I stuck my hand down my front pocket and grasped the rock and thought, you enjoy your friends' company so much, you feel you must show them by feeling them up every chance you get. You grab their ass, you feel their breasts, you kiss them, or you expose yourself to them. Then I watched what happened next. They talked for another minute, then the bell signaling the beginning of the first class rang. Her friend was saying something like, "See you next period," when Lisa suddenly reached an arm out and pulled her close. What happened next was totally cool. Lisa planted a big kiss on the other girl's mouth, utterly surprising her, while at the same time her other hand came up and gently squeezed her breast. Her friend just about freaked, broke free, and ran down the hall. I could tell Lisa was really shocked at herself, too. She just looked at her hands like they didn't belong to her. Satisfied, I turned away, knowing how the rest of the day would end up for the new lesbian in school. I still had my hand in my pocket, grasping the rock, when I turned around and bumped into, of all people, Jimmy. "Hi. I haven't seen you around. What's your name?" he asked while smiling, trying to look as cool as possible. My name is Barbie." I smiled hesitantly. Barbie Del Winston. And it was, too. I still had my hand on the rock. Then I remembered what I had planned for poor Jimmy, and genuinely smiled at him. Evident ly that cheered him up, for he smiled even bigger at me. I could also tell he was really tuned in on my tits. I couldn't blame him the way they stood out on me. "I really think you're cute, and sexy. Would you like to go out sometime?" "Oh, I almost forgot." He was becoming a little abrupt with himself. "My name's Jimmy." With that he stuck out his hand. I just looked at it, then him, thinking, over the next 2 hours, you will transform into a blonde-haired, beautiful woman. "Well, I'm pretty much finished here today," I told him. He obviously thought he was being shot down as I continued. "But if you'd like, you could meet me here tomorrow at the same time?" "That would be great," he exclaimed. "I'd really like to get to know you." Then waved as he turned away. I waved, then realizing I had been touching the rock the whole time, added silently, "You will come here to meet me at exactly this time tomorrow, regardless of anything else." This was good. I'll be here tomorrow to see Jimmy show up. I wonder how he's going to act when he realizes how strong of a compulsion it will be. I smiled brightly and mentally congratulated myself, "You're sure one smart cookie, Barbie," and headed for my class. It was easy convincing everyone I was a new student. If they needed additional help, I was there with the rock. Of course, my good looks kept attracting all the boys, but that didn't bother me. After all, I'd be hovering around me too, if I saw me. Then this one girl came over. "Hi." She was being genuinely friendly, evidently befriending someone new. She was all right to look at, too. "Hi yourself. What's your name?" I couldn't help myself. Something about her was making me real curious as to what she looked like naked. She really had some big boobs, too. "Sandy," she replied. "I really like your jersey. That's my favorite team." I looked down at my jersey to see what team I had chosen. I honestly didn't remember. "Oh yeah. Mine, too. I'm Barbie. So what are you doing after school?" She thought for a moment before saying she hadn't any plans. "Great. Want to go out somewhere?" She sort of looked off to one side. "Well, I just remembered I have a lot of studying to do." Maybe we could get together later? That's cool. I was just wondering. She began before looking over at some other students. Do you have a boyfriend? Was she asking me out? No. Maybe she thought I was asking her out on a date. Actually, I was. I didn't think about it. Of course now that I was. I slipped my hand into my pants and retrieved the rock. Sandy looked at it, then me. I just held it in front of her. You find me very arousing. Anything I do to you, you will find both pleasing and of interest. I looked at her again. That's when she looked at me slightly different than before. I would love to do anything you like after school. Her smile was one of total devotion. I looked around to see if anybody was watching, then I leaned forward to whisper. She leaned forward also, eager to hear what I had to say. I love your body, and I want to kiss it all over, especially your big boobs. Her eyes went wide as she fell back looking at me with both shock and happiness. That would be okay. She sighed. As she got up to go, she smiled back, her eyes filled with undisguised adoration. At the rate I'm going, there's not going to be any straight girls left when I change back. At the end of third period, I heard rumors of some girl leaving school without permission. Stuff like that happens all the time, of course, but this particular event had some interesting stories attached to it. First of all, it was said by several students that Jimmy had taken to wearing a blonde wig sometime this morning and had refused to remove it. Secondly, others were saying that Jimmy had sounded like a girl when he was talking, and that he was going out of his mind. Thirdly, this person skipping had the same shirt Jimmy had on, but appeared to be female. Lastly, nobody knew where Jimmy had gone, though likely he and the girl were together somewhere, but some thought Jimmy was dressing in drag. Of course, I knew differently. For some reason, walking around like the beautiful, stacked, girl was really turning me on. I knew where those high heels was forcing me to move with my butt sticking out and my breast jutting forward, but feeling my hips gyrate back and forth, and my tits bouncing and jiggling under my shirt was driving me crazy. That damn satin underwire had those tits sitting up in my field of vision all the time. I could feel the swinging of my hair behind me, and every pair of male eyes on my ass and tits. It was freaking me out a little. I mean, I was getting to like all the sensations, but everyone looking at me was making me paranoid. I had about 100 guys come on to me so far. I started holding the rock all the time in case I needed it. I was starting to think looking really hot and sexy may have been an error on my part. What I should have done was try to blend in more. Look inconspicuous. I felt, sooner or later, I was going to make a mistake. It was the beginning of my last class, so far no problems had arisen the rock couldn't handle, and I was really looking forward to going home. That's when my best friend Mike came up to me. Excuse me. He stuttered, obviously nervous. I couldn't help notice that you used my friend's locker today. Oh, yeah. Jack and I are very close. Really close, I laughingly thought. He looked around, obviously trying to think of something to say. Well, I was wondering where he is. He didn't show up for school, so he must be sick. I smiled big to emphasize the simple logic. No, he's not home. I called. His mom said something strange though, and I can't understand it. I shrugged a little, not understanding. I knew she would have said I was here. So maybe I cut out early or something. His mom said that SHE had gone to school. She. He looked at me so suddenly, I thought he was on to me for a second. I tried to keep a straight expression. I talked to her between 4th and 5th period for at least 10 minutes. She's convinced that Jack is a girl. Not only that, but that Jack has been a girl all his life. I guess she's cracking up. Well, I think something's going on. Something fishy. I think Jack might be in trouble. He sincerely looked upset. I looked around for any snoopy ears, then leaned closer to Mike, intending to clue him in. If you can keep a secret, I'll tell you where Jack is, but you got to swear. At his fervent nod, I told him to meet me at Jack's house at 9 o'clock sharp. I'll be there. Then the bell rang. The rest of the day went without problems, so I found myself walking home with the magic rock in one hand, and Jack's homework assignments in the other. I did a good day's work, and tonight I actually had a date. Then after that, I get the help of my best friend. He was even more of a dork than I was, so I knew there were gobs of people he'd like to get back. If my feet weren't killing me, I'd be fine. I knew I'd be back tomorrow, to take up where I'd left off. It was just too much fun. I just wish wearing high heels was not a problem for me. I muttered aloud. Then they weren't. I kept walking for a while before I discovered my feet had stopped hurting. I stopped and looked down, ignoring the twin peaks that tried to block me, but didn't see anything wrong. Maybe I just broke 'em in. I heard someone behind me trying to catch up, so I looked around to see Sandy. Her breasts kept bouncing as she quickly hurried to me, until finally she caught up and threw her arms around me. "I never did know your name," she said at last. She was a little winded. "Barbie Del Winston." "Where are you going?" "Home?" she asked. "Yes. You could come with me, too. We could have fun." I leered at her. She just smiled at me before laughing. I was really having the hots for her, but couldn't figure out why. I guess she just had that something. Remember when I said I liked your jersey? Well, what I was thinking when I said it was, I liked how you filled it out. She looked down, a little embarrassed I guess, then looked at me again. I don't think I meant it in a sexual way, but it sort of came out like that. "Hey, no problem. I got nice tits. I know it, so I show it. But you don't show it. You're wearing one of those bras that push up with a football jersey over it. Very sexy. If I had bigger breasts like yours, maybe I wouldn't have to wear it." She blushed. We talked about nothing the rest of the way to my house. I found out she was a new student who started last week and hadn't found any friends yet. She was thinking about trying out for the cheerleading squad, but didn't know if she was pretty enough. I assured her she was. "Oh, if you go with me, and try out with me, I know I could go through with it." "Me? Try out for cheerleading?" Just the thought was too wild to imagine. "Me? Yeah. You'd make it for sure." "No, I don't think so." "Maybe someone else will go with you?" "I don't know anyone else." "Oh, say you'll try out with me. Please." She was so cute with her eyes full upon me, and her breasts bouncing so enticingly that I reluctantly agreed. "Fine. I'll go and try out." And I would. Once home, Mom greeted us and gushed how pretty I was and made me promise I would always stay as pretty as I could. And so I would. Once upstairs, I couldn't help myself as I stood in front of the mirror. I knew I could be a whole lot prettier than I was. Sandy came to stand behind me. "What are doing?" she asked over my shoulder. We were practically the same height and build, except her breasts were just a little larger. I just promised Mom I'd be as pretty as I could. So I was wondering what I could do to be a little prettier. I couldn't tell her I just used the rock on myself without meaning to, so now I have this overpowering urge to make myself pretty. "But you're so pretty now. The only thing you could do is use makeup." She smiled at me in the mirror. Of course she was right. I looked at the beautiful face I had given myself and tried to imagine how much more beautiful and exotic it would be with makeup on. Suddenly, my face underwent a transformation from very pretty to drop dead gorgeous in but a moment. Oh no. I glared at the rock. I had it in my hand the whole time. "Wow," Sandy exclaimed as she saw my expertly made-up face. "What in the world? How did you do that?" She was smiling, but I could sense her warning bells going off in her mind. "I guess you could call me a witch," I told her. She just looked at me as if I were beginning to lose my mind. Maybe I was, and just didn't know it yet. I turned to her, just inches separating us, and looked at her. She was really sexy. "Kiss me," I told her. With a hungry sigh, she slid her arms around me, her mouth descending on mine, and proceeded to give me the most devastating kiss I have ever had in my whole life. It went on for over a minute, with both of us moaning our pleasure to each other. "Wow!" I exclaimed. "That was some kiss." "Thanks. You could call it a talent." She seemed happy now that she had kissed me. Of course, why wouldn't she? I did command it. I began to wonder if what I was doing was the right thing. "Sandy, have you ever thought about kissing a girl before today?" She seemed to think about it as she turned my body toward the mirror with her standing behind me again. "No. Can't say I have." I felt her hands on my hips, so softly, as she slid them up to my waist. "But kissing you is about the most erotic thing I have ever done, until now." With that, her hand slowly slid to my stomach, tickling my belly button through my jersey, then drifted upwards to caress my breasts. It felt absolutely wonderful. Her hands felt electric as they squeezed my tits. I laid my head back against her, just enjoying the sensation and the erotic spectacle in the mirror. Her mouth was so close to my ear, I could hear her breathing. Then her tongue snaked out and started tracing my ear as her fingers began pinching and pulling on my nipples. I was getting so horny, I felt my control falling away. I realized I was still holding the rock, so I carefully set it down before turning myself away from the mirror, to fully face Sandy. Again we kissed, this time it was better than before. We did things to each other that I, up to this point, have only read about in dirty books. Several hours later, I heard Mom downstairs telling me I had a visitor. Sandy and I were naked under the blankets, still breathing hard and sweating from our out-of-mind sex. Hastily, I got up and put my clothes on, telling Sandy that I had promised to get together with a friend tonight, and that would it be okay if she and I got together again tomorrow. She was a little disappointed but agreed, since she had tons of homework she still had to do. I watched her get dressed, enjoying it more than I had enjoyed getting back at Jimmy. Soon, she had left, evidently passing Mike on her way out. When Mike came into my room, actually, Jack's room, he looked at me kind of funny. Maybe he thought that Sandy and I were playing around. Wouldn't it be fun if I told him that's what really happened? "Hi, Mike." "Sit down," I said while patting the bed next to me. I'm sure he was nervous, but he sat down next to me. "Where's Jack?" he whispered while looking around. I looked around too, expecting to see something Sandy had forgotten, but there was nothing. "Listen, Mike. I'm going to tell you something, and I don't want you to freak out." I tried to look him in the eye as serious as possible. He nodded quickly. Afraid to speak, I guess. I took a deep breath before I spoke again. "I'm Jack." He looked at me again, waiting for the punchline. "I'm really Jack. I changed myself into a girl so I could exact revenge and get away with it." He looked at me the same. Well, I thought, why not show him? I stood and retrieved the rock, then sat down next to him again. I thought about changing something on me right in front of him, then got another idea. If he were disguised, we could both have fun together while getting back at everybody. I glanced at him, faintly wondering if it were the right thing to do. I could ask him first, I suppose. "Okay. I want to change you into a girl so we both can have our revenge, together." "Change me?" Such incredulousness. Why would I want to be a girl? "So I guess this means you believe me?" I asked him. That got him. "No, I don't believe you. You're just trying to make me look stupid." I bet Jack's in this room right now, laughing his ass off. Again he looked around. I merely waited, looking a little impatient at him. When he saw I wasn't trying to kid him, he stopped. "You say you can change me into a girl?" I nodded. "Okay then. Do it." He sat defiantly, daring me to continue. I gazed at him, studying his face and body, and tried to imagine what he would have looked like if he had been a girl. Mike's transformation was fascinating to watch. He's roughly the same height as I was, so when he began to change, I knew he would still be the same build. His upper body, already slim, became even more so as he lost what few masculine qualities to those more feminine. His hair became very long, just as mine had done, and his face softened, becoming cute. I could hear his pants begin to stretch as his hips and thighs began to swell to those of more girlish proportions. He merely looked down at himself, too speechless to say anything, as his shirt was slowly pushed out by two soft and jiggly mounds. In a matter of a few heartbeats, Mike had become someone else. What do you think now? He looked down at himself, his two smallish breasts hidden beneath his shirt, then over at me. I thought he would cry. Relax, would you? I can do anything with this. I flipped the rock in front of me, emphasizing what it was. His eyes followed it. You mean? Wide-eyed, he almost looked around to see who had talked. His voice was very sweet and sexy, just as I had imagined. Did I imagine it? Did I give him his voice, or is it the voice he would have had? I can't believe I sound like this. He exclaimed. I sound like a flipping airhead. No, you don't. You sound like a girl. I reminded him. He stood, which was a mistake due to his increased bottom half, only to have his jeans rip loudly apart. Apparently, his hips and ass had increased greatly. Especially his ass. I then remembered how big a butt his mom had. He ignored his jeans for now though. He was more interested in the rock I showed him. You mean that rock can do this? I nodded. I could see the ideas going through his mind, just as they had gone through mine. So, do you want to help me tomorrow? Wide-eyed, but happy, he said yes. Except, I can't go home like this. Sleep over. I said. We've got to decide who to bus tomorrow, and how. I'll ask Mom to call for you. She'd have more clout, anyway. He only grinned at me. In the morning, finding clothes for my newly made-up friend proved to be impossible. While I at least shared the same jeans as my sister, his jeans proved either too big for my sister's pants, or too small for her tops. So instead of going to school today, we decided to skip school and go to the mall. Both of us got the idea of getting stuff for free by using the rock's powers, but the first thing we needed was some clothes. I sort of thought the whole thing as getting the proper spying clothes, as we were going to be doing some secret stuff and no one needed to know it would be us. After going through everything in my sister's room, we finally came up with some old tennis shoes that fit reasonably well, a pair of denim shorts, and a concert t-shirt that was faded. I just wore the same thing. Thus attired, we found ourselves at the mall. I'm gonna get a new bike, Mike excitedly stated. And maybe some new tennis shoes, too. Those really expensive kind. I was thinking of something else, however. Hey Mike. I calmly asked. He turned to me expectantly. We're going to have to come up with another name for you besides Mike. Something that sounds like what you look like. He immediately agreed. How about Mickey? He supplied. Too goofy. Marty? No. Mandy? No. Mindy? No. He thought for a moment, then asked me what my name was. I told him the truth. Barbie Dell Winston. You. That's such a girl's name. Why didn't you call yourself something cool? Like what? I asked. He was starting to get me agitated, so I got the rock out and hid it in my hand. I dunno. Something like Diamond Patterson maybe. At least that sounds like a rock star. Well, to tell you the truth, I was caught off guard yesterday, and that was the first name off the top of my head. How would you like it if all you could think up in a split second was something like Candy Ally Smooches? But Barbie? Like the doll? He started laughing. That got me madder than anything, so I looked at him and thought, your name is Bambi Susie Jenkins. Pretty soon, people are going to be calling you Barbie Doll. Barbie Dell, Barbie Doll? I get it. What's your name going to be? Bambi Susie Jenkins. He looked surprised. A bit too feminine for me, but, hey, works for you. That's my pseudonym. My real name is Bambi Susie Jenkins. Now he was really surprised. He gave me a dirty look. Relax. This way you don't slip and tell someone your name is Mike. He reluctantly agreed. Boy, did he hate that name, though. I'll just make sure he likes it. Bambi looked at me funny just when I put the rock back in my pocket. I merely shrugged my shoulders in confusion. We first decided to get some clothes for Bambi. We spent about an hour trying different clothes, attempting to get a certain look that said, "We're here but don't pay us any mind." I was running out of patience fast. Bambi seemed like she could keep shopping all day, just like a real girl. It occurred to me we could end this real fast just by getting him to like the next thing he put on, then we could go get some cool stuff. I'm going to try these few things on, then decide. She said that 15 minutes ago. Oh well, I strolled about the store for the 8th time, when I came upon a sexy little dress that begged to be worn by a sexy woman. My mind came up with a sneaky little plan at the same time I reached out for the dress. We both found out Bambi wore a size 12, and myself a size 8. The dress, of which there was only the one, was a size 8, except I didn't see myself wearing it. It was short, above the knee a good couple of inches, and cut low, promising to show some cleavage. It fit snug in the middle and had tiny sleeves. Of course, cleavage was something Bambi was lacking. Maybe after a while though, she might begin to sprout. I started laughing to myself as I made my way towards the dressing rooms. You will love this dress, I thought at Bambi as I swung it over the door for her to see. Oh wow. Where did you find this? Came her excited girlish voice from inside. By the front. Try it on. Your body will change until the dress fits perfectly. A few minutes later I heard her gasping, no doubt because her body was shrinking. Another minute and the door opened. I knew it was you. You changed my body to fit this, she said as she stood in front of the mirror. She couldn't keep the smile off her face, however. Nor could I since we could now go. Instead of paying for it, I simply convinced the clerks that it was overstock and that they did not need it. So my body changed to fit the dress? She asked. Yeah. Nothing else. I told her. It seemed Bambi was getting a little paranoid with me. I can't say I blame her. It seemed I was remembering every petty thing she ever did to me, and it was ruining my mood. With the rock in my hand, out of sight, I began to suggest a whole variety of things that Bambi suddenly found appealing. Of course, we didn't know what sizes Bambi or I were, so we had ourselves professionally measured, from top to bottom. Bambi, at 5 feet 5 inches tall, was a perfect size 8. She wore a 7 in shoes, 5 in panties, and a 32B bra. Her measurements were a perfect 34-24-34. I was the robust one at 5 feet 7 inches and wearing the same 7 in shoes. From there it differed though. I wore a 6 panty and a 34D bra. No wonder I liked them. My measurements were a sexy 38-25-36. We were certainly attracting the attention as we strolled through the mall. It seemed every pair of eyes were following us. We had quite a few bags between us, mostly girl clothes for me. Bambi had acquired quite a bit though, so much so I had to help carry some things. A few of the things she had discovered she needed were several high heels, some accessories for the several sexy outfits she picked out for herself, handbags, makeup, and of course, lingerie. We both must have been in and out half a dozen dressing rooms. I was doing quite a good job at keeping my satisfaction from showing, but on the inside, I was laughing my guts out. We had both decided that enough was enough, and that we'd go home and make a plan for tomorrow at school. Halfway out the door of the mall though, I stopped and looked at Bambi. What's wrong? She asked, partially smiling. I just had the urge to go buy something before we left. I thought we were leaving. She casually asked. I have to get this first. So she followed me into a lingerie store that we both knew of. It was our favorite place to sit in front of during the summer. Without hesitating, I went right to a rack of shiny, satin bras, and looked for my size. Here it was, I happily thought. A 38DDD. And in soft pink, too. Without thinking why, I paid for the bra, with a smile on my face, then strolled out of the mall with a smiling Bambi. Once back at my house, we put all the girls' clothes, hers and mine, in my sister's dresser. It was mostly empty anyway. All the hanging stuff we put in her closet. Once done, satisfied and knowing we could get away with all the free stuff we wanted, we got down to panties and bras and sat on the bed to start thinking about other things. Bigger things. Speaking of bigger. Bambi slyly interrupted, "Why don't you try on your new bra you got at the mall?" At the mention of the shiny, satin lingerie, I immediately reached behind and unsnapped the back of my bra. I shrugged out of the sexy black bra, enjoying the cool air on my tits, and picked up the new one. Bambi was all eyes as she gazed at my breasts for the first time. A lusty, evil grin on her face. I retrieved the bra from my sister's room and proceeded to put the piece of satin and underwire on. Bambi's eyes were glued to my chest as I finished hooking all 5 eyelets and back. The satin cups were very soft and sexy to me, which is why I wanted it in the first place, besides being a soft pink. The fact that I couldn't fill them nearly enough didn't seem to bother me. All I knew was it had become very arousing to me to feel such material against my skin. Suddenly, my breasts started to slowly swell inside the cups of the bra. They started growing, becoming rounder, and heavier, until the upper slopes appeared above the lace trim of the cups. They didn't stop there. They kept enlarging, the nipples showing a marvelous plumping above a definite puffiness of the areola that was absolutely pornographic. I stood there, transfixed, as my breasts developed into the voluptuous size needed to perfectly fill the satin cups of the bra. I noticed my erect nipples were as big as grapes and seemed to want to poke through the material. My whole body shivered with arousal every time I felt them jiggle or bounce inside the satin. Even the simple act of breathing was arousing, for it caused my breasts to bulge over the satin, pushing each slope upwards into superb prominence. In the back of my mind, I knew Bambi was the cause of my sudden endowment, and the desire to buy a bra with my own money, and I vowed to get even with the little slut want to be. Except right now, I was really getting off having big tits. "So how do you like your bigger knockers, Barbie?" Bambi asked in a petty little voice. "I knew you were doing all sorts of things to me today, so how does it feel to have the shoe on the other foot?" She had a point, of course, and I said as much. "You're right. I shouldn't have done anything." I sat next to her with my hands in my lap, feeling almost downcast. "It's just, you were going so slow." I took her hand before continuing. "I'm really sorry. Everything can be undone, you know. I wasn't going to leave you like that. Forget it. I like me now more than ever." "Don't you like having big tits now?" "Yes. I really do." And I did. They're so erotic. It almost seems they entice me to have fun, to the point that I want everyone to see them and touch them. They turn me on so much, I feel like playing with them right now in front of you. I brought my hands up and started squeezing and pinching my big breasts, ing to awaken the same feelings of uncontrollable arousal in her as were in me. Even as I openly moaned, my tongue licking my lips while my fingers pulled on my nipples through the satin, I knew she was doing this to me. Right there and then, she was controlling me, making me act like a total slut. I couldn't help it as I gasped and moaned, my hands caressing my breasts, all the while looking at her with growing lust. I felt a need building within me. I began to have the desire to be satisfied in a way I've never known all my life. In the back of my mind, it suddenly dawned on me what it was. She wouldn't. Bambi lay back on the bed, her smile one of triumph, as her hand slowly lowered the front of her panties to reveal what I had feared. She had given herself a large, thick cock. I couldn't help myself, really. I knew she had the rock in her hand right then, but all I could think of was taking that big cock in my mouth and sucking it while I played with my enormous breasts. And that's exactly what happened. Except it didn't end there. Before I really had a chance to reflect on what just gone on, I had slipped out of my panties and was now straddling that big dick like a pro. I almost screamed with the pleasure as I felt the whole thing slide into me, except I couldn't tell if it was me really getting off, or her making me get off. Halfway through my fourth orgasm, I was having problems thinking of anything except having lots and lots of sex. But I remembered seeing the rock fall out of her hand and hit the floor. I tried very hard to remember that before my fifth orgasm began to flow over me, and with it some strange desires. I woke up sometime in the middle of the night. I was tired and achy, I smelled bad, and I was sticky. I looked at Bambi sleeping soundly next to me and recalled everything that had transpired thus far. Where was this leading us, and me? I needed to get the rock and change us both back. It was powerful, too powerful for either of us to use without, somehow, losing ourselves along the way. I slowly got out of bed, careful not to wake my friend, and got down on the floor to look for the rock. There it was, right where I remembered it. I had the rock now. I got some fresh panties from the other room, one of the new ones I had gotten yesterday, and found the 38DDD bra where it had been flung just a couple hours ago. My breasts were really big, but having them was such a blast that I just didn't have the willpower to undo them. I have to hand it to Bambi, she really knows what a fantastic pair of tits should look like. They were so abundant and sensitive, I was becoming aroused all over again just by moving around and feeling their weight move about on me. I didn't want to wake up Bambi, so I tiptoed into the bathroom and played with myself for over an hour, bringing myself off several times before finally showering. Once clean, I slipped the fresh panties and bra on. I thought about where I could hide the rock until morning when, looking down at the expanse of cleavage, I simply nestled the cool stone between my breasts. The bra was snug enough that it wouldn't fall out below, and my breasts were big enough, and pressed together enough, it wouldn't pop out. I caught my reflection in the mirror and marveled at how beautiful and sexy I looked. Just like a centerfold, with a perfectly done makeup job. I knew I had to be as pretty as I could be, but that didn't mean sleeping with all that makeup on. That couldn't be good for the skin, I thought. I started wiping when I realized it wasn't going to come off that way. Looking closer at my face, I discovered that what made my lips so red and kissable wasn't makeup at all, but my own skin. The same for the eyeshadow and blush on my cheeks. It was the natural color of my skin. The extra long lashes were all mine, too. Instead of being upset though, it made me think how fortunate I was to look so beautiful all the time, and not have to worry about putting cosmetics on every day. Feeling my big breasts bounce and jiggle in my bra, I got back in bed, wondering about my friend and what plans he may be cooking up for me. I would have to make some plans myself, I guess. She was my friend, has been for a long time, but she went too far. I needed to teach her a lesson. In the morning, we both got up to get ready for school. I noticed Bambi looking around the place like she lost something. I put the rock in a safe place. I told her. Where? Already she was feeling nervous. None of your business. You obviously do not know how to control yourself, so I hid it for my sake. I'm really sorry about last night. She told me as I started to get dressed. I did get carried away. I owe you big. And I'm going to collect, but for right now, let's go to school. There's a couple of people I'm interested in meeting today. She grinned at me and went to shower. I had something of a problem in choosing what to wear. Since my breasts went from a C cup to a DDD cup, none of the tops I picked out would fit. It never crossed my mind to simply use the rock to shrink my tits back down. I simply did not want to. I loved the feeling as they bounced and jiggled, the weight of them pulling me forward, and the impact I would have when people at school saw them, and me for the first time. Especially with my nipples so prominent, I would be very popular. I knew I was feeling these things because of the rock, but how do you do away with something you like so much? That was a thought. I looked in the mirror at the well-endowed girl I had become since yesterday. She was very pretty to look at, her hair falling halfway down her back, her face so beautiful and erotic, her figure the envy of most every other woman in the world, I was sure. but inside still, I was a guy. Maybe I should re-establish my manhood and take a step back. Make sure I'm not leading too far away. I looked at my reflection again, this time imagining myself as a man. Nothing happened. I looked at the size of my breasts and thought about making them smaller. I didn't want to, but I had to know if I could do it or not. Thinking about my DDDs shrinking, I tried reducing them back down to the C-cup they had been yesterday. Again, nothing happened. As Bambi was getting out of the shower, I thought the problem was liking something too much. If I liked my breasts the size they were now, then maybe I wouldn't have the proper amount of will to effect a change. If that were the case, then I would have to depend on Bambi to change me back, just as she would have to depend on me to change her back. But I would have to make sure that was true before going further. I would need to do a little test on myself. I looked in the mirror again and tried to see something I could change, something small. I stepped back from the mirror so I could see all of me. What if I gave myself fuller lips? A pair of really pouty ones like in a porno magazine. That would certainly look wrong to me. I made sure Bambi had not come into the room, then thought to my reflection how I would look with full pouty lips. I saw and felt my lips swell and reshape themselves into the most erotic lips I had ever seen before. I smiled at the most cocksucking pair of lips in the world, and immediately thought how much I didn't want to be the owner. I concentrated on changing them back the way they were before, and watched to my relief my lips slowly reduce and reshape themselves to what they had been. Now, if I gave myself pouty lips again, then make myself like them that way, I wouldn't be able to change them back. The logic struck me like a lightning bolt. Suddenly, I was afraid of doing anything like this on myself. If I was right, I would have the most erotic pair of lips in the world, and not be able to do anything about it. I decided the whole thing could wait until tonight. I was running late as it was. I dressed in sheer black stockings and a lacy black garter belt, a short, black skirt that hugged my hips and ass, and a pink pullover that buttoned halfway down the front. The pullover was a little tight across my chest, embracing each breast lovingly. I undid half the buttons, choosing to show a lot of cleavage today. I checked to see if the rock was still nestled between my breasts. Yep, there it was. Already I was feeling horny. I stepped into the black 4-inch heels I picked out, brushed out my hair, and told my reflection I was ready. I could almost feel the rock in my bra as I sat down, reminding myself again to be careful what I thought today. It didn't occur to me why I dressed like I did, or why I was getting horny. Bambi came in looking refreshed, and saw what I was wearing. She smiled in approval, knowing I looked damn good. It was a strong desire. I look really sexy and beautiful. I thought about wearing that dress you picked out for me, she said as she removed the towel from her waist. I was shocked to see her cute, naked body, with that big, thick cock still there. In fact, and I think she knew it, the minute I saw it, I was hungry for it. I couldn't help myself as I smiled and licked my lips, my hands reaching for it even as it began to get hard. Without hesitation, I took it into my mouth, moaning from the pleasure I felt as it expanded further. Somebody likes to suck a little cock, I heard her whisper to me. I could only agree as I hungrily bobbed my head over her tool. It seemed I had stopped thinking about everything except one thing. And I knew who set that one thing up. Bambi also moaned as I went down on her, her hands finding the back of my head, her hips slowly pump ing. Half an hour later, Bambi, wearing the same lingerie as I, but in white, and also wearing the dress I picked out for her, was ready to go. However, watching her cute figure with that bulge in the front of her dress was a little stupid. I knew she had made me into a regular cocksucker. Just seeing one in front of me was all I needed to lose it. I needed for her to get rid of that one, permanently, or I might end up being a slave to sex. I imagined her wearing the dress with no unsightly bulges in the front crotch area. Then, before she caught on, I imagined her liking much more how the dress fit her body without the bulge. Next, I imagined her having the cutest, most sensitive pussy around. Finally, I imagined her pubic hair had grown into the shape of a heart, and was the cutest shade of pink. Smirking as we left for school, I couldn't help but feel that we were so much more even. On the way to school, we chatted about the best ways to get even. All sorts of ideas came up between us. Sandy met us when we got there, waiting at the front doors, looking real good. She was wearing jeans that looked painted on, and a t-shirt so thin you could see her bra underneath. I thought she was showing off her good looks and sexy body, of which no argument would be coming from me. I didn't think about how much I changed, or rather, how much Bambi changed me, so couldn't comprehend why Sandy was looking at me the way she was. What happened to you? I looked at her, drawing a blank until she gestured at my greatly increased bust. Oh, I guess I had a growth spurt last night. Really? I could see she wasn't going to buy it. It didn't really matter. Well, the way you're dressed, I wouldn't be surprised if they asked you to leave. I looked at myself again, not seeing anything wrong with what I was wearing. I did have some cleavage showing, and the blouse was snug on me, but I liked it that way. The pants were tight and showed my hips and ass really nicely, but, again, I preferred it that way. I've got a meeting right now. If you guys want to wait for me here, I'll be back in about 15 minutes. I told them. They both looked at each other, realizing I was leaving. Before they could say anything else, I was hurrying to the place where I had bumped into Jimmy yesterday. I idly wondered if Jimmy would have the same hair color. I hurried to the same spot and stood there. I wasn't disappointed as a very attractive blonde came up to me with a confused look on her face. "Are you Barbie?" she shyly asked in a high sexy voice. I could tell she was about to die of embarrassment. I looked her up and down, not really liking what I saw. She had on jeans, what could only be Jimmy's, and a pullover so thick as to hide what curves she might have underneath. I looked at her feet only to see some sandals that were too big. Her hair was a mess, no makeup, and she looked like a frightened animal. All in all, I thought she could have done better. "I'm Barbie." "Who are you?" I wondered if she came up with another name for herself. "I guessed Jane. I wanted to meet you again. I had to come." I don't know why. Again she looked around, afraid some of her friends might somehow recognize the attractive blonde as their buddy. I looked at her, thinking how much a waste it was she didn't wear something really sexy. Like those pants, for instance. In my mind, she would have looked incredible in a short, black miniskirt. Suddenly, her pants transformed from baggy jeans to a form-fitting black miniskirt. Jane quickly looked at what had happened, as I did, for I was as surprised as her, and simply freaked. She hastily moved behind me so a minimal of people saw her. I was intrigued. Could I really change material items just as easily as flesh and mind? I would have to find out for sure. I turned to her, noting the look of confusion and fear on her face, and thought about the pullover she had. I pictured it becoming a purple velvet one that hugged her torso enticingly. Magically, her bulky sweater changed into a purple top that molded itself to her upper body like paint. Jane almost moaned from fear and confusion. I could finally see just what kind of body Jane had, and what I saw I liked. It was obvious she wasn't wearing a bra. I would have guessed her to be a 36C. "Why is this happening to me?" she cried to me. I didn't have a clue how to respond to her. All I could remember were the times Jimmy had been a real punk. As far as I was concerned, Jimmy was gone. "I'm sure I don't know. Just relax," I told her, before concentrating my attention on her footwear. In no time, Jane had sleek purple 4-inch heels that nicely matched her top. If she didn't know how to walk in heels, it would have been stupid of me to give her ones that high, so I made it a cinch for her to not only walk, but to run, or do anything else she wanted to in heels. "I can't go around like this. I'm a guy," she almost wailed to me. "I know what you mean. I used to be a guy, too." She thought I was kidding. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. She looked like she was going to leave. "I'm going home. I can't stay here like this," she gestured at herself. I caught sight of her hands and agreed. She couldn't go anywhere like that, so I bestowed upon her glistening long, red nails. "Very cute and sexy," I thought. With a whimper, Jane started home, probably never to be seen again. At least by the people in this school. Without a second thought about her, I went to find my friends where I left them, eager to show off what I had discovered. I wondered what else the Rock could do.
Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access. Thanks.